And this morning we're joined by international psychologist Dr. Anjhula Bais. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, both.
Good morning. Okay, so the SPM examinations are ongoing. This is a season 4 exams. So, in the Asian context, because, we place a lot of importance on exam and exam results, do you find that children succumb to unnecessary pressure here in this region?
Yes, without a doubt. So it works like clockwork. At this point in time in my private practice, you see an uptick of children of a certain age coming, oftentimes accompanied by parents, and sometimes parents have their own sessions, which is very helpful. But a lot of the same ideas are swirling around in each of the children, irrespective of ethnicity or race. And it's just a lot of stress and a lot of pressure.
What are some of the issues that they're coming in for?
Anxiety, depression, panic. There's a lot of compare and despair. What will people think? There's a lot of catastrophizing. If I don't, do well, what does my future hold? So, therapy involves a lot of debunking of those myths. On one level, like if I were to say right now, if the listeners and to both of you, the world is flat. The likelihood is most people would just start laughing and saying, no, it's not. The world is not flat. So what we've been taught about education, exam, studying, and what that means for your future is right up there with the world is flat. It's not true.
Okay.
In the lead up to examinations, do you feel that it's important to, some mental preparedness, seeing a specialist in the sense to get ready for, exam season? Is that something that's advised?
Well, if you think you're feeling particularly out of control or particularly stressed, of course, that can be very, very helpful. But I think generally it's good to have a preventative strategy so it doesn't reach the point where you need to see a professional for this, right? Mm-hmm. And part of that preventative strategy means thinking about metacognition, thinking about thinking. Examine your beliefs. Is the exam the be-all, end-all? Does it tell you everything about yourself and who you are and what your trajectory is going to be? Again, the science and the research, on standardized testing and exams basically say that it's a snapshot of a particular moment of time. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really predict your career or where you'll go.
Yeah, but unfortunately for our children who are sitting these major exams, they've been conditioned to believe this is the be-all and end-all. And it's not just coming from maybe their teachers in their schools, but their parents as well. So how can we help them along that, to calm
Parents,
them down?
Please listen. It's not worth it in the long term. You may get that results short term. Let's say your child does very well in SPM, but in the long term, you've inculcated that your worth is tied to exam marks. You haven't inculcated a natural love for learning. It's rote memorization.
Okay, well, talking about conditioning, can we condition to tough love, which I'm sure many students will see during this exam period or in the lead up to the exams. We'll discuss more on Mind Matters after Lenka Online. So with SPM season going on now, many parents, many students as well, all stressing out. And we're joined by international psychologist Anjhula Bais to discuss more about this.
Okay, now we spoke to several people in the office and they all said that had it not been for the tough love from the parents, they wouldn't have done as well in their examinations. Is this really effective? What are your thoughts here?
And may I add one more thing as well? When we spoke to one guy, he did say, had his mom not hit his knuckles with a metal ruler during exam period, he would have not done well. And he was actually quite proud about it.
So first of all, let's convene a group therapy session for Lite employees. Yeah. Number 2, that's just conjecture. It's very easy to look back and go, this because of that. It's not linear. It's not straightforward. Please realize that we're evolutionarily primed to be accepted and liked by our parents. Why? Because they clothe us, they shelter us, they feed us, they change us. I can't tell you how many young people I see, or even in extremely abusive situations, for example, it's too harrowing to sit there and think or to know or a lot of times admit to yourselves, my parents actually didn't do a good thing. It's just much easier to say, no, they did their best, they meant the best, and I'm okay. It's almost a form of denial. Why do we assume that rapping on the knuckles and tearing somebody down is the best way forward? There's so many studies that show positively reinforcing, building someone up, have equal, if not greater effects in the long term, right? So there's same way to accomplish things that are not stripping someone of their dignity, that is not harsh, that's not cruel.
Okay. Well, I guess, with this attitude and change of mindset, it also comes about the general approach we have to how we see examinations. Up next, we discuss about this with music from Roxette on Lite. So I guess it's debatable who is more stressed, parents or students, because SPM season is about. And this morning we're joined by international psychologist Dr. Anjhula Bais as we discuss the exam period.
That's right. Now, let's talk about the exams themselves. This is 2018. We know that, not all hiring employers are looking at exam results. So should attitudes towards exam results change, or have they changed?
They should change. They're changing slowly. I wish they would change faster. And answer the question of who has more stress, parents or kids? Parents. Kids, they actually have a natural equilibrium that we're all born with. But as we become adults, all kinds of ideas start to calcify that are maladaptive. Things like, look, my parents, rapped me on the knuckles and were really harsh with me, so I turned out fine. But that's just a way to convince yourself. Fine is very relative. If you were to really see how you were performing mentally and emotionally, it's probably not at an optimal level. And then we pass that on to kids. Absolutely right about employers are looking at different things. They want people that are well-rounded. I have numerous examples of employers that don't just want people that score off the charts and that look good on paper, because that's just so cookie cutter and cardboard. Who are you? What are your passions? What are your interests? Can you think outside the box? Are you just more than rote memorization? And, our neighbor, Singapore, has actually employed psychologists to rehaul their education department, because they are actually, on some grade levels, they're doing away with exam scores and marks and averages. That won't even be there anymore. Wow. They're emphasizing, yes, this was released probably like a couple of weeks ago. They're actually emphasizing that our future citizens need dialogue, creativity, debate, soft skills,
It sounds great.
Absolutely. Like, why is it impressive that you can memorize a bunch of things?
Yeah.
And then, so it really reminds me of what Steve Wozniak said, Steve Jobs' partner. He's like, countries in this part of the world, like India, Malaysia, Singapore, they'll never come up with an iPhone because they're not creative. It's just memorization. They don't think outside the box. So, as a nation, if we really want to harness our full potential, we need a paradigm shift.
Okay, and just going back to, I guess, the concept of, the exams are here to stay. The concept
Not necessarily.
Okay.
There's a lot of cultures that do away with exams. So, hopefully.
Okay, well, we'll see how that goes.
I can hear a lot of students cheering.
Yeah, I know. But I guess, the exam's still here, and when it comes down to the kind of belief, or I guess how people say that you work better under pressure. When you're stressed, you're more successful. You can be more successful at things. I mean, does that not work with exams? It's not recommended.
I love it. It's like urban myth. Again, right up there with the world is flat. Maybe what they're basing that on was what was a kernel of truth, which is anxiety and stress up to a point is necessary in life, right? We can't go through life without it, but it needs to be in optimal levels.
Okay. Well, sometimes the pressure can get too much, and what are the signs to look out for if you have a child who may be showing signs of it? We'll discuss that next on My Matters on Lite. SPM season is currently going on, and there's definitely lots of pressure, lots of stress for not just the students, but the parents as well. This morning we're with international psychologist Dr. Anjhula Bais to discuss how you can help each other.
Now, Dr. Anjhula, we have heard stories in the past of exam-related suicides. What are some signs that parents and even teachers and peers can look out for?
Excessive intermittent bursts of crying, fatigue, exhaustion, withdrawal, isolation, a sense of hopelessness. If you're hearing things like, what's the point? I don't want to try, excessive sleeping, loss of appetite, irritability. Now we have all of that, it's on a spectrum. We have bits and pieces of that, but, within limit. You know your child pretty well, hopefully. If you see it and it's a cause for concern, take it seriously.
All right. So what can students themselves do if they feel that the pressure is getting to be too much?
Please talk to an adult that's not your parent. Maybe you don't have access necessarily to a therapist, but there's amazing online tools. Read up, perhaps talk to a school counselor. Maybe you find that your friends' parents have a different approach. Or try to make your case succinctly to your parents, but just realize with your mind, your heart, that it's just a snapshot in a particular moment. That's not who you are.
Yeah.
Your exams literally are not who you are. There's something you do, but you're fine.
Yeah.
And congratulations on making it this far.
Yeah, exactly.
Well done.
You move on, right?
100%.
I remember.
I have so many stories I could say myself,
Yeah, I remember being an SPM candidate and how stressful that was, and then thinking, wow, that's the be all and end all. And a year later, I was doing something completely different. And all that was like in the past. And whatever results you did get, I mean, you bounce back from it.
You do. And everything, it's about how you frame it and think about it. More often than not, parents pass on their anxiety or depression to their children. So if you live with someone who has anxiety and depression, you're 32% more likely to get it yourself, some research shows. But, the interesting thing is life is long. You don't want to think of it as a 100-meter dash. You think of it as a marathon. You pace yourself. Sometimes you drop the baton in between, but you pick up and you carry forward.
So whilst within Asia, education seemed like the most important thing, how is outlook outside of the region? We'll discuss that next on Mind Matters on Lite. It's Mind Matters this morning with international psychologist Dr. Anjhula Bais as we discuss the SPM season.
Okay, well, let's talk about exams in general. I think you touched on how us Asians deal with exam and exam stress. I mean, I understand that in Northern Europe especially, they've done away with exams. And what is the outcome there?
The outcome is excellent. You have happy people that are really passionate and good at what they choose to do in life. And in Asia, a lot of the emphasis is, education, yes, it should be a right. It's a privilege. You want to use your education to empower others. And, on some level, you can say education is sacred. But I think it's crossed a point where it's just become the be all and end all. There's just so much emphasis on what are you going to be when you grow up? And I think a healthier way to reframe that is, which problem are you going to solve? Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, Asian parents oftentimes raise their kids with, if you don't score high, then you won't get into a good university. If you don't get into a good university, you don't get a high-paying job, and it's disaster. Your life will fail, and it all ends. You can't trust people. Life is tough. The world is a dangerous place. And then it doesn't take a PhD in psychology to figure out that by the time you're 20, why do you have anxiety? Whereas, let's say, for example, Scandinavian parents, they will inculcate from a young age, the world is a beautiful place. Mm-hmm. How would you like to serve it? And the outcomes are very different. In certain parts of the world, they don't focus on math and science and hardcore curriculum. They teach morality and ethics up until 4th standard. And then that really translates into a brilliant society. In other countries, if you have a little kid that likes playing with rocks, they're like, go play with rocks. Maybe you're a future geologist. If you like animals, go pet them. Maybe you're a future veterinarian. As opposed to, you must do math. You can see the outcomes. What happens is we have very, very high scoring Asians, and I'm not making a blanket statement or overgeneralization, but a lot of times when they play on a world stage, they're not equipped with the skills. They may score high in math and science, but in terms of carrying forth in other soft skills, the ability to dialogue and interact, that's lacking.
Okay, well, to all exam goers over this period, all the best, and to parents, just try to relax a little bit. If you want to listen back to the podcast, you can go to lite.my after 10. Coming up next, relaxing favorite requests of songs you want to hear to start your morning. Get ready to call in next on Lite.